Welcome to the 2017-2018 NBA preview. My name is Josh, your Enviers, and today we're going to be covering the 21st ranked team, the Indiana Pacers. Like usual, huge shout out to Grantland. They're the inspiration for this series. And like usual, this series isn't based off of who's going to win a championship. This is simply based off of win-loss record. And last year, the Pacers' win-loss record looked like 42 wins and 40 losses. The big thing that happened last year was Paul George. Paul George is no longer on this team now, and we'll get into that and take a look at that in the next few slides. But it was essentially only Paul George on this team. Yes, they had a young guy in Miles Turner, but Monte Ellis fell off the face of the earth. I say this all the time, but I'd rather take George Hill over Jeff Teague. Larry Bird stepped down. They got a new coach. And this year, I don't see him hitting 42 wins. I don't see him making the playoffs and getting swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers. I do see them, however, proving people wrong. They could prove me wrong. I might have them way too high for the paper team that they are. Last year, the Pacers fooled me that they were going to be a top 10 team in the NBA. They weren't. They look nice on paper. They look nice now on paper. They look like a solid team with no superstar, with the potential of Miles Turner becoming that guy. Solid team on paper, and we're going to take a look at this solid team on paper by the offseason moves they did.
So here's what the Pacers acquired in the offseason. Darren Collison is back with the Pacers for the second time. Hopefully this time he doesn't get a starting job taken. He might. Who knows? It's only a 2-year deal, so it's a relatively good contract. The quote-unquote bag of potato chips traded for Paul George, Victor Oladipo, and Domantas Sabonis. I don't see what people are talking about, saying this was a one-sided, lopsided deal. The Pacers are retooling, rebuilding, and they weren't able to get a superstar of Paul George's caliber back. But that's fine. If we take a look at the roster in a bit, it's pretty solid for a team in the Eastern Conference with little competition. They were also able to add Corey Joseph and Bojan Bogdanovic, not to be confused with the other Bogdanovic that the Sacramento Kings have. I know, I definitely got confused because their names are almost exactly the same except for like 1 or 2 letters. Taking a look at what they lost Paul George. Obviously, he wanted out of Indiana. He wanted to sign with the Lakers, but he got traded to the Thunder. And now the Pacers are being as petty as some of my old YouTube friends and are going to apparently file a tampering attempt from Magic Johnson and the Lakers. So that could possibly be a way for the Lakers not to be able to sign Paul George in the offseason. We'll have to see how that story plays out. But other than Paul George, I feel like the other guys don't really matter. To be totally honest, it's not like these other guys were doing much. CJ Miles, another great shooter that always got yelled at by Paul George in the playoffs, saying, I deserve the last shot. If you have the ball, pass it to me. I'll shoot the terrible shot and miss. So CJ Miles, although he's a good shooter, I feel like they replaced that with Bogdanovic. Monte Ellis, although I'm a huge fan of him, like I said in the beginning, he fell off the face of the earth. He was kind of useless for the Pacers. And Jeff Teague, although he's a solid point guard and he's probably going to kill it with the Timberwolves, I don't like him personally as a point guard. I feel like Darren Collison is a solid replacement. He might not be as athletic as Jeff Teague, but he could do all the little things, and he's a solid NBA starting point guard, especially for a team like the Pacers who now need a point guard. They honestly didn't lose much besides Paul George. This team can do really nice and surprise a lot of people in the Eastern Conference. I'm not saying playoffs, but they could definitely win more games than a lot of people project them to be winning. A lot of people say they're going to be the worst team besides the Bulls and possibly Hawks in the NBA, which is kind of outrageous to say. There's definitely some worse teams in the Eastern Conference than the Pacers. Taking a look at the draft picks, they were able to draft 2 UCLA guys with the 18th and 47th pick, along with Edmund Sumner with the 52nd. Moving on to the projected rotation, we got Miles Turner, Thad Young, Bogdanovic, Oladipo, and Collison. That is a... I feel like I keep saying this because it's so true. This team is pretty good on paper. Honestly, I like the backup guards too. Lance Stevenson and Corey Joseph. I feel like Lance Stevenson is going to be not the player that he once was with the Pacers, but he'll be a better player than he once was the past few years with his time in Charlotte, with the Clippers, the Memphis Grizzlies, etc. Then we have a young guy in Glenn Robinson, Sabonis, and a not so young guy in Al Jefferson. This team is very young, but also mixed with the perfect amount of veterans. I feel like that's the perfect recipe for success. The Pacers might be onto something this year, or I could be completely wrong and they will be the worst team in the NBA.
Overall, a solid starting 5. Is this starting five good enough to make playoffs? Maybe. It's the Eastern Conference, but it's good enough for me having high hopes for this Pacers team to not be as bad as the Bulls after losing their superstar. You know, the Bulls lost Jimmy Butler. They're obviously going in the rebuild direction. The Pacers lost Paul George. I think they're going to try their absolute best to continue to win. Even though if that's not going to happen, they're going to try their absolute best because this team on paper is a whole lot better than the Chicago Bulls team on paper. So my question is for the Pacers, can Miles Turner step up and become that next superstar for the Pacers? Now that Paul George is gone, they're going to need to have that one guy that's just the standout player. Is Miles Turner that player?
Miles Turner is going into his 3rd season in the NBA. And his play style in the NBA fits perfectly to what the other centers are doing, such as Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid. He's athletic, he can shoot the 3-ball, and now without Paul George being there, I feel like he can easily average a double-double this season, considering this is technically his team now. I expect everything to go up from Miles Turner except for probably his percentages, considering he's going to have a lot more looks and hopefully a lot more opportunities. I expect Miles Turner to have a big year. He can't help this team all by himself. The other guys on the roster like Oladipo and all the other young guys are going to have to step up as well. But the Miles Turner era of Indiana is probably going to start real soon. But still, losing Paul George is going to hurt. They're not going to be a 43, 42 win team this year. They'll probably be in the 30s, if they're really lucky, 33 and 34. Let me know how you feel the Indiana Pacers will do in the comments section below. I know the Pacers, right? They lost their superstar. They're supposed to be the worst team in the NBA. They might not.
With that said, if you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like on this video. It really helps my channel grow. Considering I do spend a lot of time and effort, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Before you go, check out some of these other videos on screen right now. The playlist to this series is in the description if you want to binge watch it. I don't blame you. Along with my Twitter, @Enviers. Follow me on Twitter if you want to chat about this series or anything else. Keep sharing the videos around so this series can grow and we can continue to be great. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.